Hello. I've had some requests to talk about how I varnish my paintings, and varnishing has been something that I struggled with and continue to struggle with because there are just so many different ways that you can do it, and it seems like you get a technique down and then you have a little hair in your painting, you gotta pick it out. So I start by keeping everything that I need right here. So I have my baby wipes in case I get too messy. I start out first and foremost by using this roller lint dealie, and I go over everything, including myself and my drop cloth. Now usually I do have a plastic drop cloth on top of the cloth, but I didn't do it last night. So because I didn't put something down last night, I didn't want to stir up a bunch of dust in the air. So I'm just instead gonna varnish on top of this canvas, which is still wrapped. So this is just a canvas from Michaels. It's a 24 by 36. And I love varnishing on these because it means I don't have to actually put the push pins in. And these things, once they're dry, will pop off really easily. And it also means I can move them around easily to their sort of permanent drying location. So I have everything right here. This is my varnish. I use high gloss Liquitex, and it's my favorite. It's fairly liquid, unlike the regular gloss varnish. I find that's not as liquid, and it doesn't cover as well for me. I keep pins around. These are just sewing needles. This is in case I see a hair. I have 2 cats and 2 dogs, so they are locked out of this room permanently. However, it makes its way in on me, and it can still be in the air. I keep all of the brushes. I will usually use, and I know this is wasteful, but I will try to keep my paintings as clean as possible. So you'll probably see me go through 2 brushes. I like to use 1 brush per canvas unless I feel like the brush isn't starting to break down. I keep my torch nearby to pop any bubbles, and gloves, tons of gloves. I'm wearing 2 pairs already, so it's only easy to just pop 1 pair off and have a pair underneath. And I keep these mason jars handy in case I decide that I want to dry it right here. All I need to do is put my mason jars in the corner and then use, I'm not sure if you can see this board that's behind me here, but it's a big piece of plain white sign board. I think it might be called corrugated plastic, Coroplast or something like that. And I got this at a sign shop, and I happen to have a cousin by marriage who works at this sign shop. So I got a really good deal on this. It's a 42 by 42, I believe, or 40 by 40. And it covers most of my larger projects so far. All right, so that's probably enough talking. So I have learned in varnishing for the last 6 months that the best thing to do is not to keep all of your paintings out at the one time. So I'm gonna take 2 of the pieces and I'm just gonna set them aside, because if you don't, what had happened to me was I would get drips on top of my other paintings and I wouldn't see them, and then I probably wouldn't see them until the next day, and there would be, you know, a circle, which some people could say, oh, that looks like part of the painting, and that's fine if that's what you want to do, but I want to keep mine nice and smooth and flat and clean. So this one has, I don't really know if you can tell, it's got some streaking in it, and so it was varnished going in this direction a couple of days ago, so this is actually the 2nd coat on all 3 of these pieces. So I really am going to stop talking now. I've got my spray bottle handy. This is just water. I'm going to take out probably a medium-sized brush for this project. So these are just sponge brushes. I got these at Walmart. And then I'm going to brush a little bit of water. Where am I here? I'm going to brush probably 2 sprays per side to get my brush good and wet. This is not recommended. Now I have a hair I can see it right here. Let's just take that out. Okay. Hairs are the devil when you're dealing with this kind of thing. Now I'm going to pour it directly onto the piece, and I'm definitely pouring more than you probably would recommend, and there definitely will be wastage, just to let you know. So then I'm going to work fairly quickly. It does dry fast, but you have a little bit of working time. I go in all different directions my second time around. And then for the final brushing, I'm just going to brush it completely in the opposite direction to how I had brushed at the end of the last time. And then clean up the ends and the edges. And then I'm just going to look it over. And I see I have a ton of bubbles. I think in part that's because I use a wet brush, but I like using a wet brush because it gives me a nice smooth finish. So I have my torch, safety precautions, and so on. And I just go over it very quickly. Okay, then I'm gonna take my phone. You can use a flashlight if you don't have a phone, or if you don't have a phone handy. It's got this handy dandy flashlight. And I'm gonna look everything over and just make sure that I don't see any cat hairs, dog hairs, Nikki hairs, dust, and so on. And this one looks awesome. Also, I don't know if you can tell, but it's very glimmery underneath. I used one iridescent paint, Artist Loft Turquoise, I think it's called. And it just gives it that nice shimmer, which I love. Okay, that's piece number 1 done. So now I'm going to very carefully unstick it and just slide him all the way over. Just gonna give a quick wipe with a baby wipe, just so that I don't have too much varnish underneath the second piece. All right, good to go. Okay, piece number 2. Just gonna repeat the process. I am gonna re-wet my brush. Okay, now because I did the thing that I said that we shouldn't do, and I did leave another canvas on here, I am going to look this canvas over and just make sure I don't have any drips on this canvas. And I do have a tiny little hair, although I'm not sure if this is in this coat or in the previous coat. Nope, this coat. Awesome. That means I can take it out. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to just try to get up under it with my sewing needle. All right. I got him. So now I know I have hair on my gloves. So I am taking this pair off and putting them right in the garbage. I'm gonna torch lightly. I have some kind of weird bubbling happening over here, and I don't really know what that's caused by. So I'm just going to take my pin and see if it's bubbles that I can pop, or see what the heck is going on. Oh, so I think it's just little, oh yeah, it's just little tiny spots that must have had bubbles from the last time, because last time I varnished it, the first time that I varnished it, oh, and a hair, I didn't have my torch upstairs with me. So I was trying to blow on it to get the bubbles out, and I don't find that that does as good of a job. So I do have some bubbling that happened in the last coat, but it looks kind of cool. So it's not a loss. Okay, so we're pretty good here. I have a little hair under here again. Yep. Even with all of that, with putting my hair up in a bun, I wet my hair before I put it up in a bun, I changed into clean clothes, I used a roller to get rid of all the hairs. You can still get tiny little hairs, and they just come out of nowhere. So just be vigilant. The last thing you want is to wake up tomorrow morning and see that your painting is covered in little dust and hairs. If that does happen, what I tend to do is I will take one of my sewing needles and I'll kind of gouge it from the side at a really sort of low angle. And I'll just kind of like scrape from the side, and that will lift the hair out, and it does leave a little bit of a mark, but you only get the hair and you don't touch the painting underneath. So I'll kind of show you what I mean. So I'll just take the pin and say I had a little hair right there, and I'll just go like scraping, I'm not sure if you can see that, scraping, just like that, but just with the very, very end of the needle. All right, piece number 2. Done. All right, I have one more. I'm thinking this brush is gonna last me for the last one. Okay, this isn't great because I didn't really want this to happen, but I do have a tiny hair here. So I can kind of show you what I mean about trying to dig at it. So this is dried into the varnish. It's so small, nobody but me is ever going to notice it, but artist prerogative, I'm getting rid of it. So I'm just scraping, and I'm really scraping very lightly. This, of course, will be the time I go right through the canvas because I'm filming it. Alright, cool. It's coming out. I need to go at it from a bit of a steeper angle. This is always really scary. Alright, success. So I probably should mention that I also go with the grain of the canvas. So I wouldn't go across it like this unless for some reason I had a canvas that the grain was going like this. But your grain goes up and down and it goes left to right. So as I'm scraping it with the left to right so that even if you can see tiny lines, it just looks like it's part of the canvas. Alright, gone. Perfect. Okay. Number 3. I'm just going to check over the other 2 because I did move over it with my arm and there's always that chance that you're going to get something fall off of your sleeve. So far so good. I think I have another bubble. Yep. About the torch with the varnish, just a note, you don't want to hold the torch there for too long because you will get a crackling effect. If you want a crackling effect, then I would say follow the advice in the opposite way. Hold your torch on there a little bit longer. But just always be aware that, I mean, I don't know if this stuff could possibly catch fire, but I'm going to assume that my husband would say that yes, it would catch fire if you held it there long enough. And also there's, you know, paint underneath, there's silicone underneath there somewhere still, so just be very, very careful whenever you're using the torch. And then the very last time that I brush over top of the canvas, I'm going very lightly. And I'm holding the brush very lightly at the very opposite end of the tip of the brush. And then one more time around the edges. And I just want to make sure I get that spot that I scraped out really well. And there is a tiny little hair. I think these little hairs might come off the brush. I don't really know. There we go. I didn't even need to use my finger that time. That's awesome. So I keep my gloves on. Okay, I have lots of bubbles, tons and tons and tons of bubbles. I'm going to torch those out. There is nothing more satisfying than popping these little bubbles.